Okie doke. So, and it turns a corner at the end, and there's this a statement of trust and a vow to praise God after deliverance. So that's sort of the basic sort of structure of the lament. And just thinking about that, are we very good at this? You know, perhaps in our culture, are we very good at this process of lament? And you think about, if we don't use lament, what other ways do people try and ease the pain in life? And what's any thoughts on that?
Self-medication.
Yeah, right. We've got to do something.
Alcohol.
Yeah, we'll do something with the pain, don't we? We have to we have to find a way to deal with the pain. And it could be various physical ways, or distraction, or, you know, can be destructive, or maybe people bury themselves in work or some other activity. And we just, you know, culturally, I think we're not very good at it. Whereas you see other cultures sometimes, you know, when somebody dies, there's enormous outpouring of emotion and wailing, and the processes can go on for a week, and there's lots of people and there's lots of food and things like that. Whereas we kind of, you know, we'll have a funeral and it might last 2 hours, and we have a sandwich and go home. You know, that's kind of where it is for us quite often. So I think this whole idea of lament is something to really sort of really think about, and to learn to embrace, because it's sort of, I don't think it's natural for us. And just looking at this flow we just mentioned, so just imagine for yourself, in a time of sorrow, what are in those elements there? What do you think you'd find helpful in a time of personal sorrow?
Is it Psalm 4?
Now we're in 6 tonight.
Oh, in 6, okay.
Yeah.
I'm a bit behind.
Yeah.
Okay, Psalm 6, I've got it.
Yeah. So just looking at those things, you know, if you were really hurting about something, maybe it's, you know, it could be a loss of a job, or even a family member, or just something's really not going well. What would you find helpful?
I think a complaint describing the problem would be probably one of the first things I would do.
At least I can identify what's going on. Yeah. It's quite practical, isn't it? Because it's not a very big step. I've got a problem and here's what it is. But at least now it's in frame. And I think that is a very good step. And then maybe
I think the last two, you know, being confident that there's a solution, and how it strikes me how quickly he's sort of turned the corner and come to that position.
Yeah.
He's not sort of wallowing, or, you know, woe is me sort of thing. He's, you know.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think that's actually the kind of the core of it is it is the lament helps create some motion, you know, because people oftentimes talk about being stuck, don't they? You know, but here these things are helping to create emotion towards helping to process these things. And, you know, you can't often, completely reverse the situation, but emotionally, these are, you know, helpful tools. And obviously Israel, and you look at the history of Israel, and the Second Temple period, and they had a lot of bad stuff happen, right? So the I think this is kind of how this developed.
Maybe the guy at the pool that sat there, and Jesus, told him, "Do you want to get well?" Well, there's nothing to help me. Maybe he could have done with a lament like this.
Yeah, and it might have been he kind of got used to his situation. It seems. Yeah, lost the motion, lost the momentum. All right, so then within laments, there's some subcategories, and the psalm we're looking at tonight is in a category called penitential psalms, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those, and this is where, because some lament can be about different things. The lament can be about, a national calamity, for example, but these ones are more personal. And we'll go through Psalm 6. And, of course, what's a very famous one, a very famous lament that you would call penitential? What would that one be?
51.
51, right? David's penitential psalm, where he's really pouring out, he's broken by his own personal sinfulness, and he's really bringing that to God. And so that's one of these categories. So just knowing that there's this kind of subcategory of lament called penitential psalms. And so, the psalmist is really pouring out his soul. He's experiencing guilt. He's experiencing sorrow. He's experiencing grief, but he doesn't stay there. And we can watch how he moves from the raw guilt and sorrow towards hope, forgiveness, and renewed trusting in God's mercy, and how to create momentum forward in tough times. So we're just talking about that. All right. So a penitential psalm is a lament, but not all laments are penitential psalms. That's a little technical thing there. All right. So,
Andrew, the meaning of penitential, I mean, sounds like prison, penitentiary or something. What does that word mean?
Penitence. Do you want to Google it for us, Barry? Good question.
Penitence. Yeah, penitence.
Yeah.
That's a Catholic term.
Oh, that's penance. Penance. Slightly different word, but I think it's related. Yeah. And it could well be related to, as you say, penitentiary. Yeah. Be interested to hear the actual definition. All right. So just in laments as a whole, so here's just a quick overview of some different kinds. And so the things being expressed, things like just feeling abandoned by God, complaints, disasters that have happened, personal grief and pain. It can be lots of different reasons. And you get through to like Psalm 88, and it's one of the darkest psalms, that it ends without hope at all. And so there's a real rawness there. And the Bible's not afraid to kind of end that psalm like that. So there's
I've got the meaning. It's showing that you are sorry, especially in a formal religious way, for the wrong things you have done, related to expressing penitence or penance.
Yeah. So that's highly relevant. Yeah. Okay. So this has to do with personal
Deep sorrow and regret.
Regret, all those sorts of things. Awesome. Thanks, Barry. Okay. So that's just a little setup for us on lament. So let's go and I'll talk about one last thing when we'll get into the psalm. So at the top of this psalm, it says, to the choir master with stringed instruments, according to the Sheminith, a psalm of David. So I thought, well, let's have a look at the stringed instruments. So there's a few that were used. One's called the kinnor, associated with David. Another one called the asor, which had 10 strings. Then there's the lyre, which is similar to the kinnor, and maybe that had 8 strings. that kind of thing. There's a picture of one there. And then the harp is more of a frame structure. There's that lyre there is something, you know, they could hold in their hands and pluck. So they had these stringed instruments, and that's referred to there. Now, what's the sheminith? So it's actually used a couple of times in Psalms. It comes from the Hebrew word for eight, or the eighth. And so it's about the musical setting. It might be suggesting a particular musical scale to be used. Some people say it might be referring to having an 8-stringed instrument, or the lowest note sung by men's voices, which is the octave or the eighth. I don't think that sentence actually quite makes sense, but it's a musical term. It's a little bit obscure, but it does come up here in Psalm 6. It also comes up in Psalm 12, and also in First Chronicles. And just to paint a picture of music in this era, it mentions here that to the temple service, the singers, mentions them by name. They were to sound bronze cymbals. And then there's Zechariah, Aziel, and others there were playing harps, according to Alamoth. And some other people there were to lead with lyres, according to the sheminith. There's that word again. And Chenaniah, leader of the Levites in music, should direct the music. And I love this phrase. He says, for he understood it. So, you know, if you have a song leader, make sure he knows what he's doing. I think that's they took their music seriously anyway, and they had, you know, people, they recognized the skills that people have with music. So a big part of the worship life of Israel there at the temple. Right. Let's get in and have a look at the psalm. Is there anybody who'd like to read for us?
I'll read it.
Okay.
Open.
So we're just going to read it in just a second. And again, just a reminder, so as Lisa reads it, maybe even just listen to it and let the images form in your mind, and notice how you're responding to the words. And if there's anything kind of, maybe something is actually you find quite soothing. Maybe something is quite jarring. Just see if you can sort of pay attention to what's going on for you as you hear it. So, all right. So, Lisa, fire away.
Yep. O Lord, do not rebuke me in your anger or discipline me in your wrath. Be merciful to me, Lord, for I am faint. O Lord, heal me, for my bones are in agony. My soul is in anguish. How long, Lord, how long? Turn, O Lord, and deliver me. Save me because of your unfailing love. No one remembers you when you are dead, when he is dead. Who praises you from the grave? I am worn out from groaning all night long. I flood my bed with weeping and drench my couch with tears. My eyes grow weak with sorrow. They fail because of all my foes. Away from me, all you who do evil, for the Lord has heard my weeping. The Lord has heard my cry for mercy. The Lord accepts my prayer. All my enemies will be ashamed and dismayed. They will turn back in sudden disgrace.
All right. Thanks, Lisa, for that. So we can follow along here. So just thinking about what we've just heard, anything stand out to you as we read this psalm tonight?
The fact that David felt like he'd done something wrong and he was begging for forgiveness.
So you're really noticing, is that you, Rhonda?
Yes, I finally got in, Andrew. It took me
You-
half an hour.
You did very well, and my apologies for the
That's all right.
confusion.
I tried, and I nearly gave up. And then I had one more go, and I had I prayed, and I said, "Oh Lord, please show me how to get in." Anyway, that's the thing that hit me was that he was begging God to have mercy on him.
Yeah.
And that he obviously thought he'd done something wrong, which he had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. It makes me think of, boy, when was the last time I was really begging God for mercy? You know, verbally like that. You know, wow. That's quite a reaction, isn't it? That's to be begging. So awesome. Anybody else that stood out to you as you listened to the psalm?
Let me save me because of your unfailing love.
It seems quite, for me, it's quite rich, like Rhonda. That was the first thing. The first verse really stands out for me. Like he's almost afraid of God's wrath on him,
Right.
and but then it goes on to a lot of other, almost confusing mixed messages. He's seems like there's a deep, I don't know, sickness within him, something that's been there a long time, and then at the end he's almost blaming his enemies, and he's flipped right around to knowing that God is going to come true for him. So it's all very quite rich, but almost mixed messages for me.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. That bit about where did I see it? Oh, no. Yeah, among the dead, no one proclaims your name. Who praises you from the grave? Doesn't seem to know much about heaven and.
Well, that's actually a very good observation. They didn't. And we'll talk about that a little bit. But yeah, in the Old Testament view, when someone died, they went to Sheol, which is just really a name for the place of the dead. And they didn't really have very, very highly formed, thoughts about what happened after that. But they knew that was kind of the end. They didn't. That was it. You're dead. And so God had no point in me dying. I think that's what he's saying there in verse 5. I can't praise you if I'm dead. So yeah, it's kind of mixed, isn't it? It's like, well, is he sick, or and he's about to die because of his sickness, or does he have enemies, or is he feeling these things physically because he's so distraught? Yeah, it's hard to know, isn't it? Exactly what's going on, and maybe it's gathering up a few different things. Yeah.
It's anguish is causing him physical hurt.
Yeah.
And that happens, of course.
Yep. And we'll chat about that a little bit when we get to the verse in detail. Yeah. Anything particular, any pattern. So it sort of follows this pattern a bit, doesn't it? We talked about. He's got a complaint. It starts off, and you can't get that sense, could you, in verse 1, like he's almost like, is he cowering in fear? Don't hit me, don't chasten me, have mercy on me. But yet there's this confidence that comes later on. Verse 4, he's actually turning to God. Return, O Lord, deliver me, save me. I don't want to die. Is he just being dramatic, or is it actual? He's 6 and 7. He's sort of worn out. He's just crying all the time. And then the turn comes at the end, and is okay, you guys out of here. God's heard me, and He'll receive my prayer, and will be delivered. And all the enemies will go home. So yeah, it's lots going on, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like, well, it's not like he doesn't know the love of God. Like he doesn't. He's expecting God to be so angry with him. He doesn't understand that if God does discipline him, he does say discipline me there. If God does discipline him, and he's doing it because he loves him.
Okay, so we're
Like
talking about.
well,
So we're talking about David.
A father disciplines his son, doesn't he?
Yeah,
But it's not out of anger.
right.
Or it shouldn't be out of anger.
But
So what's
no
going
discipline
on
seems pleasant. No discipline is pleasant at the time,
Yeah.
but then it produces a harvest of righteousness. So this is almost like an illustration of that, of Hebrews 12.
Yeah, and what Barry's saying is all very nice, isn't it? but and I think this is what the psalm starts to do, is when you're in the middle of it, we're not like, I'll just remember Hebrews 12 and I'll be okay. You know, that's as people, it's not quite how we operate, is it? And there might be better days for David when he is very confident that God is with him. But what he's doing is he's showing us, I think here, we're starting to ask questions about him because he's so kind of caught up in this. And but it's very real. You know, he's really pouring himself out. And we know all these things too. And a pretty good question for us, well, what are we like, you know, when we're deep in hard times? We never thought any of these things, you know. I'm sure we have. And then what we have to actually do is be able to process the emotions and come out of it. And I think that's what the Psalms are trying to help us do, get a better frame out of that. Very interesting. All right, let's what's it about? So we sort of, is there a storyline? Yeah, so we just talked about this. 1 to 3, Lord have mercy, I'm a mess. That's how I would summarize that. Deliver me from death, 4 and 5. The grief does not leave me all night long. You know, I'm just constantly crying. That's what he's saying there. But then 8 to 10, there's a new hope and a strength. And God has heard my prayer. And that's the sort of the pattern there of the
where he says deliver me, the 4-5, deliver me from death, is that following on from the fact that he's feeling so sick physically? Well, or talking about separation from God?
Or maybe his enemies are at his door.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. It's not clear, is it?
No.
And I don't think it even has to be clear. We're talking poetry here, and maybe he's, you know, you can think of all the different, you know, calamities, and they do seem to blend. As Ray was saying before, mixed messages. There's kind of could be different. Is he sick? Is he just afraid? Is there someone who wants to kill him? What's going on? And maybe all of the above.
True.
And we just have to sort of watch what's going on and see if we can take note of that and enter into that ourselves. All right. Well, let's go through it slowly now. Lord, rebuke me not in your anger, nor discipline me in your wrath. Be gracious to me, O Lord, for I am languishing. Heal me, O Lord, for my bones are troubled. My soul also is greatly troubled. But you, O Lord, how long? What's he asking for here, do you think?
No. He obviously is aware that he's done something wrong, and he's asking God to have mercy and release me from my troubled mind and body.
Yeah, be gracious to me, have mercy. Yeah, he's asking for mercy, isn't he?
He's asking for mercy for sure.
And what else? What else is he asking for?
To not make it long.
Yeah.
Mercy now, please.
Relief from his pain.
Yeah. I don't want to stay like this. And Lord, you seem a bit slow to me. Yeah, Ray.
Yeah, is there a reference somewhere prior in the Bible to sin going into the bones or something? Being felt in the bones, the consequences of sin. Is that somewhere in, I don't know,
I'll find
Leviticus?
I think the idea. I think the idea certainly comes up in Psalms a bit. I can't think of anywhere before that. Just do a little quick search and just see. So if we
I'm having a look here too.
Yeah, the
sorry, I've got to.
Yeah, they certainly took care of people's bones and burial quite a lot.
What does the Bible say about aching bones? It's there.
Yeah, this is the first mention. This is the first mention in Psalms.
Yeah.
Certainly Psalm 22, which would be one of the ones we'll cover, which Jesus quoted, and my bones being out of joint. That kind of thing. Yeah. I need. What does he need?
I need. Where is he?
What does the psalmist need? What does he need? Looking at his words and what he's saying.
He needs healing. I need
relief.
Relief? Maybe.
Hang on. He needs to feel like he's back in fellowship with God.
I think that's part of it, isn't it? Like a reassurance.
Yeah. It certainly sounds exactly like that.
Yeah.
Expecting God to be so angry with him and so, full of intention to punish him.
Yeah.
Punish, not discipline. That's what he's...
Which may or may not be accurate, right? You know, so it's because they're feeling these are the kinds of feelings where what we actually feel may not be accurate in terms of the reality as far as God's concerned. But he needs a reassurance that it's okay. He says, my soul is troubled. My very self, my very center is troubled. And I need relief, God. I need to know it's going to be okay. I need reassurance. Things are troubled. They're not as they should be. My bones are troubled and my soul is troubled. So physically and spiritually, both of those, I'm troubled. It's not calm. It's not whole. It's not as they should be. No, that's his situation there like that. Yeah. Can anybody relate?
Yes, very much so.
Yes.
Yeah.
In trauma, it's the effect of trauma. It is generally accepted medically that it actually the effect of trauma goes into your body, goes into your nervous system, goes into your muscles, goes into your bones even.
Yeah. I think that's really true. Yeah. I think that's really true. I can't remember if I shared this, but just recently I've been doing a bit of work for where I used to work, just sort of contracting. And in the past, I've talked about some pretty rough times there. And I sit down to do some of this work, and I just feel I can't start it. I just can't get into it. It's like something is stopping me actually physically starting the work. And I sort of reflected on that. I thought, what's going on? What's going on? And it was like a pain. And then I realized, I think this is a trauma sort of thing, you know.
A what sort?
A trauma.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. And it was coming up as I was sort of revisiting that same kind of work, various memories and things like that. And it wasn't like, it's not on the scale of 0 to 10. It's not, maybe it's 4 out of 10 or something. But I thought, wow, that's so interesting. I've never really experienced that before. That going into a particular situation which has been traumatic in the past, there's a very real physical, very real physical manifestation of that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to have experienced that myself.
Yes.
Yeah. Lots of other people have felt similar things. Yeah. So things are not as they should be. So let's move on. So then he gets on, he says, okay, turn, Lord, hello, look at me. Okay. Turn, O Lord, deliver my life, save me for the sake of your steadfast love. For in death there's no remembrance of you. In Sheol, who will give you praise? So what's he thinking about God here? When he thinks of God, what's he thinking about? What aspect, what attributes of God does he come to mind?
Well,
unfailing love.
Yeah, he's remembering that about God, isn't he?
Yeah.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because if you go back, it's like here it's wrath and here it's, discipline and anger and stuff. And here it's, your steadfast love.
And it's changed quickly, hasn't it? I mean,
we're emotional basket cases, aren't we?
Yeah. I like that.
It changes so quickly, right? But this has come out like he believes that, right? He's always believed that. But in the tougher time, we can forget these things and be more focused on what's happening maybe. And then he says in verse 5, there's no remembrance of you in Sheol, no remembrance of you in death, in Sheol, who will give you praise. This is parallelism, right? This is a case of parallelism. In death, there's no remembrance of you. Second line, in Sheol, who will give you praise? It's the same idea.
Yeah.
Sheol is just parallel to death.
Yep.
Who will give you praise? No one. There's no remembrance. That's the same idea. That's a good example of parallelism that we talked about a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And so Sheol is just the place of the dead in the grave in the Old Testament. Don't confuse it with hell. Sometimes it kind of gets translated that way, but it's in Hebrew thought, it's really just the grave, the place of the dead. So what's he doing here? What's the psalmist doing here as he's writing or singing? He's singing, isn't he? Singing these words.
He's saying, I'm not much use to you if I'm dead, am I? So.
Okay, yep, that's right.
Oh, that's good.
But what is he doing in terms of his dialogue with God here?
He's actually reminding God of that you've got steadfast love.
Yeah, that's right. He's trying to persuade God.
Yeah,
He's trying to get God to, and we've seen that before, right? The Moses interceding,
yeah,
and Abraham interceding. What if there's only 5? For your name's sake, Lord.
yes.
So that's to, and so God listens to that, and he's brought to mind. He's brought to mind these things about God, and then says, okay, on the basis of that, on the basis of that, God, please answer me. So yeah, he's reasoning. I think he's sort of gone into maybe slightly less emotional and starting to reason a bit more.
Yeah, and sometimes, Andrew, we think, do it because of your people know. I'm talking now more nowadays, I guess. People know you're a Christian, and God, I don't want that. Don't lay something on me that people will think, well, where's your God now? In other words, you're worrying about God's reputation, which is ridiculous because God doesn't need to worry about his reputation. Do you know what I mean? For the sake of your steadfast love, we want people to know that your love is steadfast. But if you don't help me in this situation, well, where's your where's the testimony of your steadfast love?
Right. Yeah, and I think he's also, the psalmist is kind of helping himself here a bit too.
Oh, I'm sure he is.
Yeah, by he's reminding himself of the way God actually is. For the sake of your steadfast love.
Yes.
And so he's got a bit of motion happening, not emotion, but movement, happening here as he starts to deliberately sort of recall these things, and maybe this is starting to help him move forwards a little bit. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
He was here reasoning with God.
All right.
Is it possible he's exaggerating in verse 5? Like, is it possible he's not actually talking about actual death, but the effect of sin, or a lack of joy? I don't know. Is that possible?
I'm dying here, God. I'm dying here. Being very dramatic, maybe. Could be. Yeah, it could be. And we are in poetry, don't forget. So it could be a bit Shakespearean or something. I don't know. So it possibly is a little melodramatic, isn't it? Possibly is. But he's basing it on his confidence, or his confidence is starting to emerge, shall we say. Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it, when you sort of slow down and really think about this and talk about it like we are here, you start to sort of see things in different ways, and if you just read it through and think it's quite rich. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. So I'm weary with my moaning. Every night I flood my bed with tears. I drench my couch with my weeping. My eye wastes away because of grief. It grows weak because of all my foes. So here, what's he describing here?
He's been going through it for a long time.
every night.
Mhm.
I flood my bed with tears. Yeah. My eyes wasting away. As any, you think to have it feels like it's going for a long time. Yeah, I drench my couch with my weeping. Yeah.
I feel like the medication that I'm on numbs me from all of that. And I want to feel it.
Mm. Yeah, I understand what you mean there. Yes.
I want to feel it. I want to feel my emotions, and I don't want it numbed.
Right.
However, that helps you survive, doesn't it? Does with me anyway.
Mm.
But it is. I know what you mean. It's not pleasant.
Mm.
And I certainly imagine it's something you could certainly miss.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Describing what? Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of his physical. It's sort of moved into physical effects here, hasn't it? He's weary.
Yeah.
He's constantly weeping. His eye wasting away. It grows weak because of all my foes. Here's the enemy being mentioned maybe for the first time. Real or imagined, I suppose. But yeah, there's certainly a physical, and I think Rhonda, you mentioned that earlier, didn't you?
Go on.
Physical effects.
Yes.
Of lament. So that's, we're emotional and physical people.
Body, mind, and spirit. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
One part affects the other.
Mm. So what do you think about the idea, which is what I see him doing here, of being able to evaluate what is going on physically for you in a time of distress?
Well, he's being able to evaluate. It's good if you can express. It is good if you can express your feelings. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
I remember, I might have said this once before to the group, but I remember a little boy in year 2 who was really angry at the school I was at, and he was playing up. He was really acting out badly, and I asked him. I started talking to him about it, and he said, "I'm just so angry because my daddy's left. He's walked out." And he cried like mad. And I thought, it was year 2, and I thought that was really good for him, that at his age he knew why he was acting out and why he was angry.
Be able to express
it. He was able to express it.
Yeah.
Which was, I found, quite unusual for that age.
Yeah.
Then he ended up, we gave him a big hug and talked about it, and he settled down and behaved very nicely.
Well done.
Yeah.
Well done.
But the big part of that was that he was able to express. It wasn't all bottled up inside him, you know. Then to be able to cry like mad.
Thanks, Rhonda. Yeah, it's a nice story. Yeah, I kind of noticed here when I was looking at this that boy, he's really explicit about what's going on physically for him.
Yep.
And I just wonder if there's some wisdom in that. Because when, things are hard and emotions are overwhelming, we tend not to take very good care of ourselves. Do you know what I mean? So, I'm eating ice cream every day. I'm eating a litre of ice cream every night, or drinking half a bottle of scotch or something, but if we can tune into what's going on physically, that's I think that's a positive thing. And I don't. It's not a massive point I want to make there, but I think it's, to me, and as I see that, I think that could be a positive thing. Anybody else got any sort of thoughts on this, or over the last couple of verses? All right, let's keep going. Okay, so then he gets to the end here, and depart from me, all you workers of evil, for the Lord has heard the sound of my weeping. The Lord has heard my plea. The Lord accepts my prayer. All my enemies shall be ashamed and greatly troubled. They shall turn back and be put to shame in a moment. So it's undoubtable, isn't it?
What version are you reading?
That's the ESV, English Standard Version.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a little different to the one that you read. But yeah, a few translation choices there have been made. But we read this part here, and it does seem like he's got a new strength, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where does that come from? What do you know?
I won't talk yet. Sorry. Well, I've been talking.
Richard, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah. Well, what I was trying to say, it's once you have confessed to God and feel his forgiveness, until you do that, the enemy can keep attacking you with thoughts of reminding you of your sin and what you've done wrong and God doesn't love you and all that sort of thing. And I think that verse 8's talking about evil spirits.
Okay.
And once and until you know that God's on you, that God has forgiven you, then you will still feel attacked. Once you are released from that, because God has forgiven you, you can stand and rebuke the enemy. I think that's what's happening there, but I might be wrong.
Yeah, I think that makes a bit of sense, actually, because the evil forces are not absent in the Old Testament.
No.
And you think of Saul was
yes,
ended, right?
right.
So and again, how did David deal with that? With it playing the harp.
That's right.
And so yeah, that's certainly a possible reading. All you workers of evil. And so what he's got is he's been slowly latching on to getting this renewed confidence about God's promises and
exactly
based on God's character. And he's now got this confidence that says, hang on, I'm not going to be buffeted by these guys anymore. And God has heard my prayer. He's heard. It's interesting. What do you think about, I notice there that God has heard the sound of my weeping. He's heard my plea. He accepts my prayer, heard my prayer. So he's talking about hearing here more than seeing.
He's talking about what?
It's in terms of God taking notice of him.
Oh, yeah.
He's talking about hearing.
Yep.
God hearing rather than God seeing.
Yeah. It's good.
Is that significant?
Yeah.
All his praying hasn't been in vain.
That's right. And you think what prayer is? It's verbal communication. So maybe that's why it's important that God has heard the sound, and even not only the prayer. What else did God hear according to this?
Weeping.
Weeping.
He heard the weeping. So he kind of maybe hears what's going on behind the sobs. And maybe it's trying to tell us that the weeping is a form of communication. It's a very deep sort of thing, and God takes notice of that. Maybe that's what He's trying to tell us here. The more than even as much as the verbal prayer, there's this kind of this maybe things wordless that we cannot put into words. God's heard the sound of my weeping.
But it's interesting that he doesn't actually mention enemies until the very end. I mean, it's not as if I get the impression that the enemies are the cause of his grief. But maybe I almost pictured like if you're suffering or if you've got some troubles, you're in a weaker position. You're somehow more vulnerable, and maybe evil people come in and take advantage of you.
Yeah.
But they're not necessarily the cause of your
They're just adding fuel to the fire. Yeah, there is a mention of foes in verse 7. I noticed, but then it seemed to be a new element, doesn't it?
Yeah.
All my enemies shall be ashamed, these workers of evil, and now it's starting to look like an army at the gates of the city sort of language.
Yeah,
turning back and be put to they're turning back from attacking, and again that might just be poetic language. It's like I've got the army of 10,000 people are drawn up against me, and it's a poetic way of talking about the things that are against him. Yeah, and having a very solid victory. So where do you think this new strength has come from? What in 6 and 7 we were drenching our couch with tears, and now he's like, depart from you, and I'm back on my feet and victoriously minded. What's happened for him?
I think it gets the strength, Andrew, because the writer knows that God is a forgiving God. He wants us to be open to Him, and once we've been open to Him about where we are and the struggles we have and why our tears are there, God has compassion on us, and the psalmist knows that and says, "Right, this is where I'm at. This is what I've done, and I know that God is there for me. He's not going to turn away from me. He has that trust that God is going to be there.
Confidence.
Yes, and he's had to recall that, hasn't he? He's had to bring those things to mind, and that's what we've observed, right? As we've gone through the psalm, he's brought these things that he remembers and believes about God, and he's brought it to his mind, and we see his sort of heart is gaining strength as he's gone there to do that. He's remembered God's faithfulness. He's remembered. It seemed a long way off at the beginning.
And his strength comes from the fact that he's been vindicated by God. I still look at that. I'm getting off the track, I think, but that whole thing from 8 to 10 still is very similar to what I was saying in my life anyway. If I sin, I'm opening up myself up to the evil spirits not leaving me alone. And once I confess to God about what I've done, confession, just agreeing with God and ask his forgiveness, then I've got a new authority. That's the word. It's authority. And that all comes from God.
Yeah. And you might be right. So this here is just, he's talking about, he's got as much a spiritual battle going.
Yeah.
As any other kind of a battle.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what he's going through.
Yeah.
All right. So we come close to the end here. So biblical connections. Again, so my bones, we mentioned that. You see that sort of idea. I think someone asked about that as well. Psalm 22, my bones are out of joint. How long, O Lord? That kind of language. Habakkuk, the book of Habakkuk is
that's a good
a great long lament. Okay.
Yeah.
Several, I think there's 3 or 4 prayers in Habakkuk, and his complaint basically it's this huge lament. Come on, God, what are you doing? How long? That same sort of language as we read in the beginning of the psalm. And then away from me, you evildoers. I think it says in one translation, pretty much, depart from me, all you workers of evil, verse 8.
Yep.
Who else said that?
Jesus.
Jesus said that. Away from me, you evildoers.
Yeah.
And he's talking about, in that case, he is talking about people, isn't he? So he's talking about people claiming to be following him, but are not really interested in doing it.
Yeah.
And if we put that back here, you workers of evil. So maybe there's people around him who
could be,
false priests or something. I don't know. And his enemies might be people in his own court.
Yes.
It's a few different ways we could look at it. Well,
let's have a look.
So just one final thought to reflect on. What does the fact that so many psalms contain words expressing anguish, pain, and confusion tell us about God? Right there in his book. You've got all these psalms to cover anguish, pain, confusion, anger. What does that tell us? That got in there.
That God is the go-to place. God is God is the one that can help you with all that. The only one that can help you with all those things ultimately.
Okay, but what does that tell us about? Yeah. What does it tell us about God himself, though?
About himself, expressed anguish, pain, that he's willing to help you.
He's willing to. Yep.
He's loving.
It tells us that he's empathetic and that he's not burdened by our burdens.
I love that.
I like it too. That's good. Yep.
Yeah, he's concerned for us. He wants to be involved with this. He's willing to listen to this. He's willing to help us navigate this.
Yeah. Yep.
That's a great point. That right. Yeah, he's willing to listen, but it doesn't burden him to be able to do.
Right. Yep.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
and there's a reality to it, right? We all know we feel these things and we have these tough times, and that's very real. It's not like you got to live this bright, shiny life 24/7. Right? This is actual life, and God is there to help us in actual life.
Yeah.
Not in bright, shiny life. Yeah. So, yeah.
Let's come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden. And
There we are. Yep.
Cast your burdens.
Mm.
Chuck them at me. I'll take them.
I can handle it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think it's a really good thing to think about, is that God cares about these things and wants to help us deal with them. Amen. He's engaged with suffering, and yeah.
He sure is.
All right. So how does this all affect me? So here's just some closing thoughts as we wrap it up. What have you learned from our discussion that's encouraged or challenged you tonight? What about this whole idea of lament that we read about? Do you feel free to express anger, pain, and frustration to God?
Yes.
Sometimes we think, I can't do that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And is this idea of emotion helpful? Of being able to just, this process through which we can start to move towards dealing with pain and anguish and stuff. So, yeah, if anybody's got any final thoughts on any of these sorts of questions.
Every one of those questions relates to my time when I did a discipleship training school. It was like with Youth with the Mission, 3 months of what I called a spiritual hospital, Andrew. And each one of those I experienced lamenting.
Right.
And I experienced anger and pain and frustration, all those things. And I guess what you said, what have you learned? As we were talking, I kept thinking back to my times through all that, where I called out to God for forgiveness for lots of things. It was like, as I say, a spiritual hospital. And I did a lot of crying, a lot of lamenting, a lot of woe is me, and a lot of realising that I'd made the choices that had not pleased God. Wasn't what he'd done to me. It was what I'd done to myself.
So very, very lots of learning and reflection.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rhonda. Yeah.
And it certainly was a process. 10 weeks of thinking I'm never going to be happy again.
I've had some victories.
Yeah.
I organised for an Aboriginal minister to come to Kalara Care, and he played the guitar and sang hymns and gave a message and prayed, and it was really encouraging. And there's someone here at Kalara Care that likes heavy metal music, and I can't stand heavy metal music, but he likes heavy metal music, and I'm trying to reach out to him. So I got him some YouTube clips of Slayer and Petra,
right,
which are heavy metal Christian bands, and he liked them.
Right.
And on Thursday, I'm going to Hymns Alive, and the guest speaker is the chaplain for the Carlton Football Club.
Hey.
Yeah, so I'm excited.
You got some things happening, Lisa.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And it's good to be able to, you know, be grateful for the good things there are. We don't have to be and those, yeah, we spent a whole night talking about lament. But it's life not always that way, is it? Amen. Anybody else?
Just the idea of the motion and how quickly he's been able to, you know, sort of turn his thoughts around, turn his anguish into confidence, I guess.
It is quite stunning, isn't it?
Mm.
How quick that was, yeah. And yeah,
which is challenging and certainly foreign to me.
So maybe next time it hits you, Barry, you'll think about that, and that might help create a little more motion for you. Yeah.
It's good to just open up the Psalms and read them, because they can say things that you can't express yourself.
Yeah.
And you can relate to them, and it makes you think. You can't articulate it yourself, and
yeah. And that reminds me, Lisa, of that verse we read here where it says God heard the tears. He heard the sound of my weeping. And I think about that as, you know, the idea of not being able to, the words that were not able to be expressed.
The Holy Spirit interceding for us with groans, with our groans.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's the lament language again, right? Yeah, right there. That's awesome. Amen. All right. We're going to have to, well, that's been great. So I appreciate everybody's contribution with that tonight. So is Craig still there? You haven't heard from him. He's gone, has he?
I think he dropped out.
He had to drop out. Okay.
Hasn't been there for a while.
Okay. So I'll close this off now. I've got to close down the meeting because I've got to get going. But we will make sure next week there's no confusion with the link. So back to the original link, and we'll stay on that.
Okay.
So thanks everybody, and we'll see you next week. Next week is, you want to go have a look at it, is Psalm 8.
Lovely.
So that's what we'll look at next time.
8.
Lovely. Thanks, Andrew.
All right. Thanks very much, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Andrew.
Andrew.
Good
Thanks,
night,
everyone.
Okay.
Yeah. Bye.